So this reading I also do passage two. The first, we have to look at the heading, the conquest of malaria in Italy. Then we have to do the subheading, review of Frank Snowden as mystery history of counter-strike and eradicate the deadly disease. What did we say in eradicate? It's remove, yes? So now, then I have to look at the type of question. I can see the first type of question is, it's a type of gap filling, it's summary completion. Then I have to read the instruction. There are no more than 2 words. If you look at that in most summary compilations, they have their own headings and titles, we can say. The malaria in 19th century Italy. Then first of all, we have to look at the keywords and we have to predict. Up until the late 19th century, experts failed to make connection between malaria and what? So what's failed to make means? Couldn't make. It's like failed. It's not the couldn't make the connection between the malaria and something. Something what? Malaria and the kind of noun, yes. So the most popular belief that you have to most popular, you have to pay attention to superlative adjective at the time was that the theory which upheld idea. What's idea means? Upheld idea. No, it's like upheld the verb. You can say the convince idea, believe that the disease was carried by unclear water. Another common, if you pay attention to another, the common idea that the malaria was a disease. Pay attention to an article and disease. And as a result, people from certain part of the pay attention to the certain part of the country were often held responsibility for spread of epidemic. Malaria was particularly widespread in rural areas via external shock. What do rural regions mean? Villages. So this is where what? Something external shock. What? Any prediction? Maybe water may be shortage. Now you have to think about why malaria was particularly widespread in the rural area. You have to find the reason. Maybe the water shortage in the rural area. Despite the malaria, it's the shortage of water inflict to the water malaria widespread, or make it the widespread of malaria. So now let's look at the second type of question. It is multiple choice. True, false, not given. So if you look at there are 3 true, false, not given. First of all, as usual, we have to highlight the keywords. The volunteers in Giovanni Battista Grassi research came from all parts of the Italy. So here the first is volunteers, Giovanni Battista Grassi. Research came from all parts of Italy. The vocabulary is like volunteers, Giovanni Battista, research, all parts of Italy. The pay attention to all parts of Italy. Experiments in Italy. In Italy, they proved that it was possible to remain healthy despite being a malarial zone. You can be healthy, also you live in malarial zone. The last one is like in the early 20th century, quinine was successfully administered to all inhabitants of the vulnerable regions. So then the third type of question, how can you call this type of question? Fetching information. So do we have anything? Kind of in B, you may use M letter more than once. No, that's why it means that we cannot choose one paragraph twice. The figure showing the dramatic result anti-malarial drug program. So the figure, what does figure mean? Number, you can say, yes. Dramatic result of anti-malarial drug program. Im- Important discovery about how malaria spread. The mention of expert decision not to halt the spread of disease. It's a mention of expert decision not to halt. What's halt mean? Stop, yeah. Stop of spread of disease. The significance of malaria story for today's readers. Significance, malaria story, today's reader. Can you give me any synonym to today's reader? Nowadays, any? These days? Okay. Examples, the pay attention, not example, but example with S. This means plural. Example, false assumption. What do false assumption mean? Conceptions, misunderstanding, yes? Which held back scientific understanding of malaria. Held back, what's hold back? Prevent. Prevent understanding. Reference to the legislation to support the fight against malaria. Reference legislation. Any synonym to legislation? Law, yes, support the fight against malaria. So now we have a three type of question. If you look at that, first of all, we have to begin pay attention to malaria in 19th century Italy, then truth or not given, then we have matching information. Then what should I do? I will begin with a paragraph. I will read a paragraph. Now you can see this is a paragraph. If I find any answers, I will choose it. So let's begin with a paragraph. The word malaria means bad air in Italy. This terrible disease marked the life of peoples of the country for thousands of years. Yet by 1960s, Italy was officially declared malaria-free. It has remained so ever. The Frank Snowden's study of successful endeavor is a remarkable piece of historical work. Original, crystal clear, analytic and passionate, Snowden takes us to the areas historians have rarely visited before. If you look at that, did they mention about in the 19th century? No. Did they mention 19th century and the connection between malaria and something? Maybe they didn't mention anything about the 19th century, the connection, late. They mentioned about the 1960, but there is no information of the connection. If you look at the mention about the volunteers in Giovanni, did they mention anything? No. So let's look at that. Anything that, and then these kinds of in here, I have to look at my keywords: figure, dramatic result. Did they mention number? Important discovery. They didn't mention expert decision, not to halt. They didn't mention significance of malaria story. Did they mention the malaria story? Malaria? No. Example of false assumption. They didn't mention about example of false assumption. So, and reference legislation. They didn't mention about the reference. But one thing that you have to also pay attention, there are 8 paragraphs, yes? There are how many questions? 6. It means 2 paragraphs are extra. Maybe the first 8 paragraphs are extra, but I'm not sure. Just I will look through the next paragraph. So let's continue with second paragraph, B paragraph. Everybody now knows that malaria is carried by mosquito. But in 19th century, most experts subscribed to theory miasma or poisoning of the air, as I made the link between swamp, water, malaria, but didn't make further leap to the toward insect. I found the answers of 15. The theory is like that. Most popular belief at the time was that the 19th century, most experts subscribe. Those subscribe means believe. Theory is theory. The answer is okay. You can write your answer in capital letter. So now let's look at the 14. What's the 14? Link between malaria and link between swamp water. Malaria didn't make a further link. Answer is? Are you sure? But it failed to make connection. They make a link with swamp water, malaria, but they failed to make link between malaria and insect. That's the answer is. insects. Now let's continue with next one. So the consequence of this theory was that little was done to combat the disease before the end of century. The situation was serious that from the total population of 25 million Italians, 11 million were permanently at risk in swamp, damp, malaria zones. Life expectancy of land workers was a terrifying 22.5 years. Economic impact of disease was immense. Economic impact. Epidemics was blamed on people who originated from the hotter part of Italy, given the widespread belief that malaria was hereditary. So another theory, another common belief that malaria was, what did they say? Hereditary disease, yeah? So kind of the widespread belief that is like another common belief. Widespread belief that malaria was hereditary disease, and as a result from the certain parts of the country with the health often held responsible for the spread of epidemics. Malaria was particularly widespread in rural regions where extremely low. Can you give me the kind of something that kind of refer to the rural regions? Okay. We have a rural regions. You can say land workers, land owners, farmers, the peasants. They work in the rural areas. This answer is, while a malaria could be extremely short. Yes. Imagine that people, when they reach the 22 years old, they will die. You understand? So this answer is life expectancy. Life expectancy. Is life expectancy extremely short? Extremely long is terrifying. 22.5 years, it is short. Yeah, of course, but 22.5 is short. So now I finished the B paragraph. Do you have anything that Giovanni? No. So and now let's look at 21 to 26. This is a numbers figure. Any figure? Kind of the dramatic result of anti-malaria drug program. This is a drug program. No. Important discovery, malaria spread. That is an important discovery. This is kind of how they spread it. This is kind of the discovery of they learned how the malaria spread. Nope. So what about 23? Mention of expert decision not to halt. No, 24. The significance of malaria story for today's readers. They didn't mention about the malaria story today's readers. What are 25? False examples of false assumption, hold back, significant understanding of malaria. So, what about the reference of legislation? They didn't mention legislation, but let's look at the one more time, 25. If you see that, if you look at the 25, you can see the example of false assumption which held back scientific understanding of malaria. You can see that here is, and from here you can choose answer. So the other made a link between small water malaria, but didn't make a further link to toward insect. This means that they didn't understand that there was a link between the malaria and insect. The consequence of these theories, which theory? These theories. The first theory is like poisoning of the air. Second is like they didn't make the further link to toward insect. That was a little done to combat the disease before the end of century. You understand? It means here they didn't do anything to combat the disease. It means that the example of false assumption hold back. Held back means little was done to combat, significant understanding. In these cases, they didn't understand the malaria. Why? Because they misunderstood. It was a kind of link between the water swarm malaria, but they didn't think that there was kind of connection between the malaria and insect. That's why there was a little done to combat disease. This is 25 is B. Now, let's continue with C, paragraph C. One of the first breakthrough in the war against the malaria came in 1898 when the zoologist Giovanni Battista Grassi demonstrated that the microorganisms causing disease was carried in digestive tract of mosquito. By realizing the mosquitoes into rooms to drink the blood of healthy human volunteers, Grassi was able to make the direct link between the insect and the disease. Definitive proof of this theory was obtained after the extraordinary serious accident in Italy, where the healthy people were introduced to the malaria zone, but kept from the mosquito bite and remained well. The recent form of the Italian state at last had the necessary information to begin to tackle the disease. So now let's look at this one. Volunteers at Giovanni Battista Grassi research came from all parts of Italy. Why not given? Yeah, they mentioned about volunteers, but they didn't mention, we don't know from which part of Italy they come. They mentioned about one thing, but this kind of, the mosquitoes into the room to drink of blood, healthy human volunteers. Grassi was able to make Grassi was able to make the direct link between the insect and the disease. But they didn't mention about anything, the background of the volunteers. That's why answer is not given. Now let's look at 19. In 19, we can see that experiments in Italy proved that it was impossible to remain unhealthy despite being malaria zone. It was possible to remain unhealthy. So, others? The answer is true, of course, yes. It's possible to remain healthy synonym to the remain well despite being malaria zone means like where healthy people were introduced in malaria zone but kept free of mosquitoes bite, they remained well. It means that if mosquitoes, that unless mosquitoes bite people, the healthy people will remain well or wealthy. Healthy, I mean. You understand? The science is true. So now let's continue. Now there is information from a but did they mention about any sort of payment centers that quinine was successful administered to all inhabitants? No. Now let's look at from the matching information. The figures show the dramatic result. Important discovery. So what about the mention of the expert decision? The whole significance of malaria story for today's reader. We chose 25. What about 26? Legislation. But you are going to choose C for 22. Yes. Why? I mean, one of the first breakthroughs in war against malaria came in 1989 when the zoologist Giovanni Battista demonstrated. Yes. Maybe we can choose yes because they show it how that the kind of malaria spread it, and the breakthrough can be synonym to discovery. Yes, that's why answer 22 is C. Now let's continue with 20 and matching information. So a complicated approach was adapted, which made use of quinine, a drug obtained from tree bark, which had long been used to combat fever, but was now as a crucial part of the war on malaria. Italy introduced quinine law and quinine tax in 1904, and drug was administered to large number of rural workers. Despite it is being often terribly cited there, the drug was successful in limiting the spread of disease and breaking of cycle of infection. That in addition, Italy set up rural health centers and invested heavily in education programs. Malaria, as no then shows, was not just a medical problem, but also a social or regional issue. It could only be defeated through the multi-layered strategies. So, in the 20th century, in early 20th century, can be synonym no, yeah, it's like early 20th century. Early 20th century is like 1904, yeah? It's like early 20th century, they start from 19,000 and 1900s to until the 19, maybe 20s. That's why the 1904 can be considered as the early 20th century. So, but there is a kind of, Queen that successfully administrated all inhabitants, but here they said the large numbers administrated, large number of rulers, but here's that all inhabitants. That's why it's raised false. Now let's look at the anything we chose Queen text and wall. Yes, they didn't mention about the figure for anti-malaria drug program, mention of expert disease, not hold, trace readers, and we can say that here the legislation to support fight against malaria. Legislation synonymous to the law and tax, yes, and support the fight, and kind of the drug was administered. They start to kind of the war against malaria. The science phrase D. Now let's continue with E paragraph. It was originally decided to give quinine to all those vulnerable regions, even healthy people. However, the peasants were often suspicious of medicine being forced upon them. Doctors were frequently met with hostility and stubborn refusal to accept the treatment offered. But despite of the refusals, the strategy as whole was hugely successful. Deaths from malaria fell by 80% in the first decade of the 20th century, and some areas escaped altogether from the scourge of the disease. Last phrase. What can we choose? The figure showing the dramatic result of anti-malaria drug program. But it looks like a 23. Can we choose the expert direction, the an expert? One that you have to, in this paragraph, should mention that one expert, but they didn't mention an expert decision, not the whole. If you look at the 24, it's like significance malaria story. They didn't mention that the significance of malaria story. I have already chosen 25 and 26. I can say the answer is 21 is E. Why? Because it's like the strategy of school was hugely successful. Deaths from the malaria fell from 80% in the first decades of the 20th century, and some areas escaped altogether from the scourge of disease. Now you can say the figure is 18%. The showing dramatic results. Dramatic results, of course, the fell dramatically to the 80%. And anti-malaria drug program is like strategy was successful. That's why answer to 21 is E. Did you understand? Now let's continue with F paragraph. So in F paragraph, with 1915 and 1980 war delayed the campaign as funds was diverted to the battlefield. In 1920s and 1930s, the drain of the dam and held the marshland around the Rhone had a certain impact on the spread of malaria. However, the war swept through the drained lands in 1940s and disease returned with the vengeance. Yet the country's leading malariologist Alberto Miseroli refused to order distribution of quinine, so allowing the epidemic to spread unchecked. According to Nowen, he did this in order to create the ideal condition for new strategy, supported the U.S. Rockefeller Foundation, massive experiment involving the extermination of mosquitoes with the chemical DDC. It's estimated more than a third of the inhabitants in affected area contracted malaria and countless thousands died. So now in here, as you can see, there is the mission one scientist, Alberto, and refused to order distribution. Kind of we can say the answer is, what answer is it? It's like 23 is F. Why? Because expert decision is like Albert's decision. He didn't want to distribute the drug. That's why they kind of wanted to kind of introduce new strategy, create a new strategy. That's why he didn't want to kind of distribute. And I mean, he didn't want to kind of hold the spread of disease. That's why thousands of people passed away. So that's why answer is 23 is F. So now the last paragraph, the last two paragraphs, let's look at only the one, the answer is 24 left. Significance, malaria story for today's readers. So with the end of the war in 1940s, U.S. government and Rockefeller Foundation was free to experiment. DDT was spread from the air and 3 million Italians had their bodies covered with chemicals. The effect was immense, and by 1962, malaria was more or less gone from the whole country. One of the final victims to die of the disease in Italy was popular cyclist Fausto Coppi. He had contracted malaria in Africa 1960, and failure of doctors in Italy to spot the disease was sign of the times. Few decades earlier, they would have immediately noticed the tail signs, and it was clear later claimed that small dose of quinine would have saved his life. In here, they didn't mention about anything the significance malaria story to today's readers. So I couldn't find, just they mentioned one thing that about that Rockefeller Foundation and U.S. government and the effect of the kind of the system WBT, and they mentioned one the famous cyclist passed away due to the failure of doctors. I mean, the doctors didn't understand the symptom of the malaria. That's why they couldn't help him, and they couldn't save the famous cyclist. Now, let's look at the last paragraph. Maybe we can find the answer from here. As there are still more than 1 million deaths every year from the malaria worldwide. Now, it's not every year. The Snowden books also has a contemporary relevance. So, this is a disease that affects every level of society, that it is rampant. The economic miracle of the 1950s and 1960s, which made Italy into the modern industrial nation, would not have been possible without eradication of malaria. Moreover, this book convincingly argues that disease was an integral part of big picture of modern Italian history. A magnificent study, beautifully written and impeccably documented, deserves the audience beyond the specialist in history of Italy. Now, in here, I can choose the answer 24 is age, and I explain you why. If you look at that, they mentioned the first one is a contemporary. The contemporary synonym term is today. It kind of the significance is relevant. It's relevant related to. It's like noun form of relevant. And of course, there's the modern, they made kind of which made it into modern industrial nation. Of course, it's like the significance of malaria is the eradication of malaria was important. Thanks to it, Italy kind of modernized it. And also you can see that this was integral part of the big picture of modern Italian history. This answer is age. Now, that's all for today. So you can see that we chose all answers from 14 to 26. Maybe nothing left.